Anytime a fire or natural disaster strikes our city, we respond in the way that we should. Unified community, ready to confront the moment and the crisis with every resource that we have. Right now, this is the same approach we are taking to homelessness. I said earlier this year that I would own the response to this from the city side, and that it was important that we treat this like we would a disaster, like an earthquake. So we're always looking to do more, faster, to respond to this emergency. So today I want to start off with two announcements before we go through our regular updates on the work to keep our streets clean and safe throughout Los Angeles, to build more shelter and to add more to our stock of affordable and supportive housing, as well as the way that we advocate for critical state and federal legislation in Sacramento and Washington. So let me start with those two announcements. First is announcements around our strategy to speed up our efforts to build more affordable housing across our city. And we're taking 3 steps to get there. First, our city-sponsored legislation carried by Assemblymember Miguel Santiago to draft a new state law, Assembly Bill 1197. This exempts our bridge home and our HHH-funded housing from CEQA lawsuits. The law applies only to Los Angeles. As was said at the press conference, if this can be done for billionaires and stadiums, it should be done for housing for our homeless Angelenos. And now that Governor Newsom has signed this legislation law, it will save us time and money, some estimates as high as $120 million in savings, as well as speeding up development by as much as 1.5 years for each development. You put that together with the nearly 120 projects that we have, and we're talking about over a century of time. Just this morning, our planning department released an implementation memo for this measure. We can get that to anybody who's interested in looking at it, that gives city employees and developers guidance on how to use this and which projects qualify for this exemption, and to ensure that those exemptions are processed quickly and swiftly, and ensuring that we'll turn this act into action in the city of LA. Second, many of you know early on we created CENTCOM, which is different than UHRC. It is a top city hall, which is a team drawn from across our city departments, something that experts for a long time had talked about doing, but bringing together LASA officials and commissioners, bringing together our city departments, the police chief, the fire chief, the head of our building and safety department, rec and parks, etc. And we brought the most senior people together, and we still do on a weekly basis. Sometimes I'll go in there and chair that meeting myself to guide and to troubleshoot on outreach efforts, whether it's on sanitation, construction of our bridge home shelters, or our permanent supportive housing, every facet of the strategy. And 2 months ago, I said we would elevate that work again to tackle the issues of the day to the best of our abilities. So I asked Nick Katsouris, who is an engineer and project manager who's with us today from the private sector on the far right over here, to join my office as an unpaid volunteer. Now, Nick has a long list of buildings he has helped get built, from the MTA Plaza named after him when he was chair of Metro, Katsouris Plaza, to this building right here, to early on in my administration, I asked him to come in and we helped the widening of the 405 project, which was really kind of in a disaster state at that point, get accelerated by an entire year so people could get back on the road. The police headquarters, which he helped Mayor Villaraigosa get on time and under budget. And now the 6th Street Viaduct, the beautiful bridge just a few blocks from here. He's that dogged outside expert who won't settle for excuses. Anybody who's ever been in a meeting with Nick knows that. He has a clear mission to cut through any red tape that he can find, and he always finds some. And to work with our amazing public servants, people like our city engineer and others who have committed their blood, sweat, and tears to this as well in the production of our bridge shelters. So he is shelter by shelter. We'll get to that in a moment, but the 18 that are left, since we opened 4, and I'll get to that in a moment, he is going through why the pipes can't move, what the problem is with the soil, all of that to have really a czar looking at this, and I want to thank Nick for his work in joining us. Third, in this first area too, on the permanent housing side of the ledger, I formed a housing crisis solution team in our office, a group of 5 experts, each managing a specific area of our work, all of them focused on how we can save time and money in standing up more units of affordable housing. We've been calling for this. I know that later on, after we even started forming this, the controller came out with similar recommendations. It is a best practice. And everyone is well aware that housing construction takes too long, it can cost too much, and we're fighting to change that. We know time is money, and having the white glove expert treatment that is here allows us to do that. A $120 million project that leverages HHH funds to encourage developers to devise innovative ways to develop housing. I think we talked about that last time, the housing challenge that we had forward. Each of the recipients that's been selected, 6 different recipients, will build their promised units at a lower cost in less time. with a saving of about 1/3 the cost per unit. And our housing crisis solution team is going to help us keep on track to meet the goals. The group that will bring everybody together from council offices to our HCID, our housing department, and partners outside of our city to reach for and to help us as well. The second exciting announcement is about Skid Row, the epicenter of this crisis, the symbol of decades of failure in this city to address homelessness on the streets of LA. We've seen the homelessness emergency disproportionately impact on Skid Row Black Angelenos and women. And I believe we became the first homelessness agency and certainly city in the country to pull together a special report on these two communities. It laid out the particular hurdles that Black Angelenos face because of racism and disparities in generational wealth. About 9% of the city population, they comprise 40% of our homeless population. More than a third of our homeless population, and down in Skid Row even higher. And LASA explored the absolutely horrific facts confronted by women on our streets. They experienced, as one study showed on Skid Row, 91% of them, sexual and domestic violence on our streets and our sidewalks, and earlier in their life as well. So building on that work, I'm proud to announce today that we are launching a new pilot program to provide housing and services for 100 women who are living in Skid Row with trauma-informed care, which is the right way to help them heal. Cultural awareness training for Skid Row service providers and leadership. And because of what we know about the community on Skid Row, this will have a significant and a disproportionate impact, positive impact on Black women who are experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles. To make this happen, we're going to tap some of the $20 million in HEAP funds, which we lobbied for from then Governor Brown, and received from the state last year. And we'll work with Councilmember Weezar and Council District 14 to get the entire council on board and direct $1.5 million to this effort. I urge the City Council to approve this quickly. My team is already working to identify existing housing stock within Skid Row to match participants in the pilot with the most compatible and sustainable housing for their needs. And we're really proud to do this work with community partners like the Enterprise Foundation, who is going to be providing the assistance, technical assistance, training support, and the Downtown Women's Center, who we've talked about in here before, which will guide the day-to-day programs. And we'll keep looking for ways in Skid Row that we can look at that, the populations of both African Americans and women. And I want to introduce Jacqueline Wagner, who serves as commissioner on our LASA board. She led the report. She was the chair of the ad hoc committee on Black people experiencing homelessness. And she's also joined here today by her fellow commissioners who are doing extraordinary work as well, Sarah Dussault and Wendy Gruhl. So, Commissioner Wagner, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, good morning. Thank you, Mayor Garcetti. I'm happy to be here standing with estimable companies such as LASA Commissioner Chair Dussault, as well as Commissioner Gruhl, who both chaired the Women's Ad Hoc Committee. As a LASA Commissioner and Vice President of Enterprise Community Partners, it's days like this that affirm that we can overcome homelessness. And it tugs at my heartstrings when we have these opportunities to help those who are most vulnerable. We realize that the importance of data at LASA and what we learned from the reports is that we need to build trauma-informed care into our systems and our providers and systems that have cultural humility. And we're going to take the recommendations for both the Women and Black People Experiencing Homelessness Ad Hoc Committee reports to put a path forward for 100 women experiencing homelessness in Skid Row. I had the opportunity to walk Skid Row about 3 weeks ago and met a woman who was very vulnerable, and I'm so excited that we'll have new programs to help and focus on women like her. We've been doing this as a joint powers authority to dig deeper, which brings us here today. And how we came to doing these two ad hoc committees in 2016, the point in time count showed that there was an increase in women experiencing homelessness. So as Mayor Garcetti shared, women are 30% of the homeless system, and Black people actually make up 40% of the homeless system. So when you calculate, that's 1 in 3 Angelenos experiencing homelessness are women, and almost half of the people experiencing homelessness in LA are Black. So it's important that we design systems that work for them. And these ad hoc reports actually put forth a set of recommendations of people that are experts in the field, people with lived expertise, and the leadership of this great city to guide us along the way for success. And I want to say that LASA has done a lot of great things since these reports have been launched. They've advanced these recommendations, a number of recommendations for women. They're currently working with both the city and county agencies to advance these strategies. And it's critical that we use these data-driven feedback and feedback from people's lived experience to guide our strategies. So it's critical now more than ever to really create programs that work for everyone. And I want to thank Mayor Garcetti and his great team, and also my team at Enterprise that helped pull this effort forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Jackie, for the great work that you're doing and for leading this really historic moment, not just identifying the problem, but now looking to solve it. The days of riding Skid Row are over. I've introduced him before, but I'll continue to. Patrick Tyler is the first city employee in charge of Skid Row ever in our history. If you can imagine a place that has been a great shame, nobody has had that responsibility, at least on the city side. I always remind people that these briefings are just about what the city can be doing, but we love the partnerships we have with the county, state, et cetera. But to have that sort of responsibility reflects our values here today. So now let's turn to our updates in the 4 areas that we do each month. First, our streets strategy, our shelter work, our housing work, and our advocacy work. And this isn't just how we organize the press briefing, by the way. This is the strategy that we are approaching the problem of homelessness, because you have to have a strategy on the streets, you need to have options for shelter, you need to long-term have housing, and we need to widen this team always and keep growing it. So this month we kicked off our cleaning and rapid engagement, or CARE teams. Some of you were there at the kickoff. It was one of the most inspiring days that I've been mayor, to see the hundreds of sanitation workers, police officers, LASA outreach folks really take off their hats and be part of one team. We have really amazing dedicated public servants who are joining this effort. Many of them hired in the city for the first time. We hired folks in record time. Remember, the fiscal year begins July 1st. That's when you can actually put out the posting for them. And I want to thank our Bureau of Sanitation for taking it seriously. These are mission-driven Angelenos who are drawn from across our city. It comprises those 3 of LASA, our sanitation workers, and our police force. All told, we put almost 50 new sanitation workers on board, 47 to be exact, assigned them to the areas of highest need, gave them training, sanitation workers in mental health, teamed them with 60 LASA outreach workers, and began the procurement, and we already have some, of 13 new mobile hygiene units featuring shower and toilet facilities for homeless Angelenos. In fact, now working for the city is a woman who used to do that with Lava Man, which some of you have seen outside City Hall. And she said only government can scale it up quickly enough, and that's exactly what we're doing. We've also reimagined our approach to cleanups around encampments. We're no longer just relying on complaints. Care teams are proactive. They're deployed on regular schedules so that folks on the street know, just like we do, when trash is going to be picked up. And they provide public health and hygiene resources quicker so that we offer services to people on the street while we're also cleaning our city. This will allow us to double the number of cleanups we have each year, from 900 in this past year to nearly 1,800 this coming year. And meanwhile, my public health task force troubleshoots problems while these teams are out there, reviews the timeliness of cleanups, the effectiveness of our rodent abatement, access to toilets, and so many other elements of this crisis. So as I said, we're doing a service-led approach. And to that end, it was very historic to have LAPD train sanitation workers on how to use walkie-talkies, to train them in over 1,000 hours of mental health, de-escalation, and crisis communications training, so that they can be as well equipped on the street of how to de-escalate and interact when there are crisis moments. Staff here at the UHRC led another 840 hours of operational training to make sure that everybody understands the new protocols for taking a services-led approach in the field. And I want to thank advocates who helped inform those suggestions as well. And LAPD, as I mentioned, had 400 hours of radio training for those folks too. All in all, we're investing close to $40 million in this model with 30 teams, 240 full-time workers from sanitation and LASA dedicated to the city's public health and conditions in and around encampments and providing services and a pathway out of homelessness. So last month you heard we'd like to bring faces in this fight forward so they can tell their stories. Monique Guest spoke powerfully as part of the Skid Row Clean Team last month. But one of the CARE team members that I wanted to introduce to you today is Rodney Bethel. He's an inspiration. He has already our office is full of a lot of Rodney fans already. And long before he ever signed up for our first outreach assignment, he was one of our neighbors that had no place to live. Excuse me. He fell into homelessness when his sister passed away about 10 years ago. And eventually, he came right here at the homeless help desk, which we established a couple years ago, when we noticed homelessness around City Hall. We said we should do something in the neighborhood where we work. And we opened up that kiosk, and Rodney showed up. He was so appreciative and so good, we saw, at what he wanted to do with his life. We hired him to staff that desk and then help other Angelenos find their pathway back to housing, healing, and hope. I'll take water, thanks. Excuse me. After rebuilding his own life, and you'll hear it in his own words, Rodney has been dedicated, as he puts it, to helping to bring relief to those who are lost, helping to relieve the pain and pressure of living on the streets. And today he's bringing that determination to our CARE initiative as a member of our homeless engagement team in Council District 5, where he'll be working. So I'm going to ask him to share a little bit about himself and why being a CARE team member means so much. Rodney, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, sir. Well, it's a great honor for me to be here today, and thanks for inviting me, Mr. Mayor. Let me say this, it's a great honor to be with the LASA organization and on the CARE team initiative. Before LASA, as the mayor mentioned, I was at the mayor's help desk, providing emergency information and assistance to those in need. Well, I connected with these people. I was once homeless, living on the streets myself. So there's a certain amount of empathy, there's a certain amount of compassion, there's a certain amount of understanding when I talk to homeless people, because I was once a homeless person myself. And it means the world to me, let me be realized, it means the world to me to be on the CARE team initiative and to give back to those people who are in need, to our unsheltered neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Okay. One of the things that Rodney told me that moved me so much is he heard a voice on the street that said, "This is not your destiny."
Yes, sir.
And that's something he says whenever anybody he sees on the street, he goes up to them and says, "This is not your destiny." And I think the power of this city to come together and do that. Thank you, Rodney, for being the tip of the spear in this fight. So we also last month had our 5th homeless services hiring fair. This one was over at West LA College. More than 600 people came with resumes in hand. It's a strong economy. You can get hired many places. But again, they're mission-driven people. And employers listed close to 1,300 open positions in the fight against homelessness. Outreach workers, case managers, employment, mental health, substance abuse, and intervention specialists. And look, I know when I do these briefings, these numbers can overwhelm, but I want to pause on this one. Because think about what it's like to build this army, to finally say we're going to end homelessness, and to go out there and actually find the individuals, recruit the individuals, hire the individuals, train the individuals. But this ship is moving, and to have over 600 people come, and to know that there's 1,300 open positions on top of the thousands that have been hired because of Measure H, HHH, and our commitment for the city and state funds. Since we began hosting these job fairs in December 2017, more than 2,750 homeless service provider positions have been filled. That's an amazing statistic in less than 2 years. And the turnout at these job fairs shows you how Angelenos care about this issue. And we need to give outreach and homelessness service workers all of our love and support. This is traumatic work, just as we say with police officers and firefighters. You see people at their toughest moment. Trust me, the time I spent out there on the streets is traumatizing. You talk to people in the toughest moments in some of the ugliest places that you can see a human being. But we know that these are also the lifesavers and the angel that's there. I sometimes tag along with outreach workers to see what they've done and how we can do a better job. Recently, I went out in Sepulveda Basin, LA River, North Hollywood, Skid Row, just to quietly, without press, with all due respect, just to kind of get a sense of what that work is like and what we can do to improve it. Anyone who's done this work or even witnessed it knows how difficult and painstaking it is, but also how rewarding it can be when we're able to connect an Angeleno with a way out for her or for him. And the stories behind the statistics, those narratives behind the numbers, some of those I want to share with you since we last met. So since we last met, we've served at least 4,265 individuals through LASA outreach workers in the first 3 weeks of September alone, which is, I always note, is just a fraction of all the outreach work that's being done by our multidisciplinary teams, including county mental health workers and others. And even our first responders like our firefighters who every day are seeing thousands of folks. We completed 758 comprehensive cleanups at homeless encampments just in 1 month and removed 9,000 plus pounds of hazardous waste from our communities. Sanitation teams made an additional 863 visits to encampments to help keep our sidewalks passable. Our crews removed 4,214 tons of solid waste. That's an increase of 110% over the same period in 2018, and this is before the care teams. This work that goes on every day means that we are ensured that we remain prepared for more extraordinary circumstances as well, just like the fires that we saw over the past week. And to that end, I signed new city law since we met that allows us to clear homeless encampments in fire danger areas where the threat of wildfires is greatest, not only to those who are housed, but those who are unhoused. And we were able to see how that works in practice last Thursday, when our fire department declared red flag status. When that happened, we activated the UHRC behind me to coordinate the response, enabling outreach and public safety and sanitation workers to enter restricted areas with the highest fire danger and to work with people in encampments to get them out. We coordinated the response with more than 140 city workers in the field. 4 regional command posts were set up in the Northeast San Fernando Valley, the Northwest San Fernando Valley, Sepulveda Pass, and Elysian Park. And here at the headquarters, we had 3 LAFD brush patrol units, each with 2 firefighters. We had 21 LAPD HOPE officers and sergeants, 68 care team members and supervisors, and 20 Rec and Parks facilities, as well as 24 LASA team members. Here's some of the results. We were able to visit 17 separate encampments that we thought were the highest risk. We moved 60 people out of harm's way through voluntary evacuation, and we removed significant fire hazards in those areas, 17.8 tons of trash, another 70 pounds of ignitable, combustible, or flammable waste, the most dangerous of all. This work saves lives and property. There's nothing more important we can and must do. I know some folks asked during the fire, there's absolutely zero evidence that the fire at Saddle Ridge had anything to do with anybody homeless or an encampment that was homeless. As you know, it's under investigation, and whether power lines or other things, we'll hopefully be able to get to the bottom, but there's zero evidence of anything having to do with any homeless Angelino. Next, let's turn to bridge housing. So this is going from our from our street work to shelter work. The homeless crisis is about a lot of things. It's about touching our streets and our sidewalks. It's about our communities, but without a doubt, shelter is a critical component at the heart of what we do. Right now, Los Angeles is adding shelter beds at a faster clip than any city or county in the country. Since we met, we opened up our 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th bridge home facilities. So we doubled the number just since we've met last time. That's 18 more are on tap by the end of this fiscal year, in just about 9 months to open. Almost every 2 weeks we'll be opening up a new shelter. And I'll detail what those 4 were. Here in CD 14, 25 beds for women at the Downtown Women's Center. In Council District 8 with Councilmember Marquise Harris Dawson, the bread yard at St. Andrews, which was done 90 days after we broke ground. A sprung structure with 100 beds for men and women. In Council District 4 with Councilmember Rue, the Gardner Library, a beautiful site with 30 beds for unsheltered women in Hollywood, where they can start rebuilding their lives and get trauma-informed care. And also in Council District 4, just yesterday, I joined Councilmember Rue to open up Wallace House, operated by Aviva, a space with 42 beds for women and children that will be serviced by people assisting the homeless or PATH. Also over in Echo Park, wasn't Bridge Home, but it's transitional housing. We opened 150 beds for 44 families at the former Gateway Hospital site for transitional family housing. And by the time of our next update, we expect another bridge shelter to open its doors in Council District 15, Imperial, with 70 beds for men and 30 for women, with the Salvation Army providing services. That's an additional 100 shelter beds opening in a matter of weeks, on top of the 419 Bridge Home beds and the 150 transitional housing beds. Altogether, this is an unprecedented pace of development. We are drawing people indoors from some of the highest density encampments in the city, and it's the fastest pace in the country, and we're going to keep accelerating. Let's go to permanent supportive housing. With all the work on shelter beds, we're always looking at the long-term permanent beds, the homes that we can put people in for good. That's why we're so focused on building supportive and affordable units that voters approved with Measure HHH, but that also we are building even before HHH was there. That helps us accelerate that work. And I think we need to clear up a little confusion about HHH. The ballot measure was designed to triple the pipeline for permanent supportive housing, not to 100% fund 10,000 units, but to get us to 10,000 by adding those 7,000 additional units. Today, we have 151 projects, not apartments, projects that are in the pipeline, fully funded, representing 10,716 affordable and supportive units, 120 of those with HHH funding. This represents, and this is a more important statistic, 13,000 bedrooms. Because sometimes, you know, one apartment may have a shared kitchen, but there's 5 bedrooms. That's 5 people who have homes now. That's 13,000 bedrooms, nearly 9,000, which is supportive housing for formerly homeless Angelenos. Angelenos, myself at the very front of the line, are right to keep a close eye on progress, and I want to keep people informed. So let me give you an update on projects that are under construction and at least 50% complete. First, we have 4 HHH projects making clear headway in South LA at 88th and Vermont, 91% complete. It'll include 62 units for low-income families, young people, veterans, and households with special needs who are chronically homeless. In Rampart Village, Path Metro Village 2, 67% complete with 90 units of permanent supportive housing for folks living on the sidewalks of that community. And in Skid Row, there's 649 lofts, which is 55% complete. That's 55 units designed to bring Angelenos indoors in the epicenter of this crisis. And in Sun Valley, Casa del Sol is now 53% done. That's 44 units in the Northeast San Fernando Valley for chronically homeless individuals who are experiencing mental illness. There's 3 more projects that were funded without HHH dollars. In West Adams, Ibarra Village, it's 91% finished, that's 64 units. There in Westlake, 7th and Whitmer is 83% done with 76 units. And in East LA at First and Soto, TOD Apartments Phase 2, that's 78% done with 29 units there. And there are a series of developments that are also designed to serve 2 of our most vulnerable populations, seniors and veterans. In Sun Valley, the Senior Veterans Apartments is 89% done, that's almost 100 units. And Westmore Linden Seniors Phase 2 in Pico Union, that's 85% ready with 93 units. And the Pico Robertson Senior Community, that's put together, that's 689 units designed to serve our most vulnerable Angelenos spread out in all parts of this city. And on top of this tremendous work, we're refusing to stand still and let this progress run its course. So I want to thank the City Council for yesterday passing a new round of HHH approved projects. It now ensures that there's at least 1 project in every council district in the city, a very important threshold, and gets them closer to their commitment to having at least 222 units in each district. Some have already passed that and surpassed that. Others still have a way to go, and I look forward to them living up to that promise. It's a huge step, though, that the council took forward in the right direction, ensuring we have high quality and long-lasting supportive housing in the pipeline everywhere. And I'm really grateful to the council for the speed with which they have dispatched. Even with everything we're doing, it's only a fraction of what we need, but it is a sign of progress. And our housing challenge, as I mentioned, those 6 different projects that are more than 1,000 units are producing for a third less the cost. And our average cost was about $151,000 of subsidy. It'll be about a third less with those. So broadly with housing, let me say some last things before I get to partnerships. We need to continue to address the supply problem to boost our overall stock of housing. Last year, we produced 75% of all new housing built in the county of LA, though we're only 40% of the county population. We're building 20% of new housing last year in California, even though we're just 10% of the population. But get this number. All told, we permitted 24,000 new housing units just in the last year alone, more than any fiscal year since 1986. And that trend is continuing. In fact, the last month that we have the full numbers in July, 2273 housing units. That is a quarter of all the housing units in California, in a city that's just 10%. That's 2.5 times greater than the population. It's phenomenal work that over time will ease the affordability crisis because more apartments means eventually relief on rents. I set that goal of building 100,000 units when I became mayor in 2021. We already reached that goal this past June, 2 years ahead of schedule, by cutting red tape, by changing zoning, by enabling housing to get up more quickly. But we need our neighbors to join us. The city of Los Angeles can't do this by ourselves. I was with the 88 mayors of LA County, which I convene every quarter, and I said, none of us are an island. Then the mayor of Avalon, Catalina, corrected me and said, actually, we are an island. But the other 87 cities are not islands. We are part of one city, and we need to build together. So driven by new housing targets set by the state for the 6-county region around LA over the next 8 years, and everybody's debating how to go back and forth. I've been active at SCAG, and on November 7th, I'll be joining the SCAG Regional Council, which is all the counties in Southern California, to look at how we'll divvy up those state targets. A city that says, we predict no growth in the next 10 years, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and no growth happens. We need to all share the growth that we need because we all pay for it. It's the linkage fee that we said to developers when you're building luxury housing, you now have to pay for us to build affordable housing. It's our transit-oriented communities program, which says if you want to go higher, you got to build on your dime affordable units for Angelenos. And that's already produced plans for 4,000 affordable units without any subsidy from taxpayers. A brilliant way to get developers to pay where they can make their money, we can get affordable units and reduce traffic because it's close to our transit. Before I finish with advocacy, I just want to, on a personal note, thank Ben Winter, who is right here. He has been the chief housing officer of my administration. The County of Los Angeles is going to get him as he goes over to the California Community Foundation to continue this work and to assist us in the work that we're doing to speed up permit supportive housing and our housing in general. But you have been an amazing part of this team, a great leader, and it has been an honor to have you as part of the City of LA team. So give Ben a round of applause. Thank you, Ben. The joke's you have to get back the jacket, but you can take it, Ben. You've certainly earned it with the long hours and the tremendous work. All those stats I said were the result of Ben and his team. Finally, everyone who since we met last, did the president visit after we met? I think he did. We've had a lot of people talking about homelessness at the national level, increasingly at the state level. And I always say, even though people play politics with everything these days, any day anybody in leadership is talking about homelessness, I look at as a good day. Because none of us can solve this alone. No one of us caused this, no one of us will solve it. But no matter what level, if somebody says they want to help, I'm ready to accept those offers. And that crosses our ideology, our geography, our political parties. We have to keep working together. It's a real advantage for us as Californians to have a former mayor in the epicenter of homelessness of San Francisco be our governor. Gavin Newsom understands this issue. He's worked on this issue for decades. And he's shown himself to be a true partner in this fight, and I want to thank him. He increased our former HEAP dollars, now called HAP dollars, by 50%. That meant more than $40 million for LA alone. He's pushed to strengthen the anti-rent gouging and eviction prevention legislation and strongly supported our efforts to cut red tape that slows down construction. And we're going to keep working closely with the legislature, which has tremendous leaders as well, and our allies in this administration to build more shelter, to provide more services, and to prevent homelessness before it starts at all. We talked about AB 1197 earlier, but it wasn't the only measure that got passed by the state. Governor Newsom signed all the following measures into law. The first was AB 1482, which creates a statewide rent cap, something that we supported and advances essential eviction protections to slow the rising rents and to prevent people from getting evicted illegally. This legislation protects 374,000 units in the city of LA from rent gouging. It's a huge number, on top of the 469,000 units that are already protected under our rent stabilization ordinance. So it brings in all those ones that were out there by themselves into the same system that we have with our rent stabilization ordinance. It takes effect on January 1st, but as we've already seen a few bad landlords breaking the rules or doing unethical things. So just yesterday, our city council passed Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell's motion calling for a ban on no-fault evictions for the rest of the year until that state legislation comes through. I won't be able to sign that quickly enough, and thank you to the council for putting that forward. The second bill was SB 329, which gave low-income Californians a fair shot at finding an affordable place to live by expanding anti-income discrimination provisions if you have a voucher. In the past, people would get discriminated against. I always told landlords a voucher is a great thing. You never have to worry about the money ever coming in. You never have to remind your renter. It comes automatically once you sign up. But some landlords were refusing, and that is now against the law to discriminate against somebody who has as much money as you have in cash in your voucher. Third was a package of measures to reduce or eliminate barriers to building accessory dwelling units, the artists formerly known as granny flats, by streamlining the development, removing impediments to construction, and requiring local governments to include these rentals in our housing plans. Here in LA, whenever possible, we know we have to hit the pause button on politics when people are in distress, when our neighbors are in desperate need, and this is one of those moments. We can only confront this crisis together when we had the Weekend to End Homelessness 2 weekends ago. I had the privilege of being part of that event. It was all across the county in multiple locations. When it was a moment to say, it's not just government that will solve this, but homeless advocates, the faith community, the neighborhood councils, artists, business leaders, and we're seeing that kind of energy on our streets every day. Don't give up your impatience about homelessness, but get involved in the patient work of ending homelessness. With that, thank you for your patience today, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Can you say something in Spanish?
Sí, en español, por supuesto. Gracias por estar aquí en nuestra tercera sesión informativa sobre el trabajo que está haciendo nuestra ciudad para enfrentar la crisis de indigencia. Mantener a las personas en sus hogares y proveer viviendas y servicios a nuestros vecinos sin hogar y ayudar a alojar a la gente. Estos esfuerzos están sucediendo todos los días en cada parte de nuestra ciudad. Y tenemos buenas noticias este mes. Más proyectos para la vivienda, más proyectos por refugios y más servicios, especialmente con la limpieza de la ciudad. Estamos combatiendo la crisis en Skid Row con agregar más de 100 camas nuevas para mujeres sin hogar en ese vecindario. Y también tenemos nuevos equipos para la limpieza de la ciudad. El nombre de estos equipos son CARE, cuidado. Pero estos equipos son equipos de trabajadores con las habilidades en la salud mental, personas que puedan limpiar las calles y también oficiales del departamento de policía juntos. Y este equipo tiene todos los recursos que necesitamos a limpiar la ciudad y traer más de nuestros hermanos y hermanas en las calles, en sus hogares. Estamos en camino para lograr nuestra meta de agregar 10,000 unidades de vivienda de apoyo permanente para el año 2026 y estamos colaborando con las fuerzas policiales para reducir el riesgo de incendios en los campamentos y ayudar a mantener seguros a nuestros vecinos sin hogar, tanto como las propiedades. Seguiremos trabajando con nuestro Consejo Municipal para fortalecer nuestros programas y gracias a los líderes en el Consejo Municipal, especialmente por los proyectos en la vivienda. Cada distrito, con una acción ayer, cada distrito tiene apartamentos nuevos por personas que son indigentes, y este es muy importante. Y tenemos 4 nuevos refugios en el sur de Los Ángeles, en Hollywood, otro en Hollywood y aquí en Skid Row. Y hay 18 más en estos próximos 9 meses. Gracias por todos los miembros de este equipo, especialmente los residentes de Los Ángeles y los líderes estatales como el gobernador Newsom. Juntos nosotros podemos no solamente reducir la indigencia, pero parar la indigencia en Los Ángeles finalmente.